Welcome to Garden Valley Church Podcasts. We are so looking forward to having you join us today.
Well, hi guys. Welcome to the Youth Culture Podcast. Hi guys, welcome back to the Youth Culture Podcast. I'm back with Emily.
Hi guys.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
What you been up to?
Just working hard, eating food. Eventually gonna paint my office.
Fun.
Yes.
I think Sam's gonna help you with that, right?
I think he is, yeah. I think you volunteered him earlier.
I did, absolutely. That's my buddy. He was on the podcast. Okay, cool. Well, hey, today we are gonna be talking a little bit about social media. I'm very excited for this conversation. You're going to be asking me some questions, and we're just going to have a little bit of a dialogue about it. It's going to be a
definitely.
good time. So,
yes. So for those of you that don't know me, I have been on previous episodes, but I actually head up our marketing department here at Garden Valley Church. I also am the social media director. So obviously I have some insight into that. Brandon, however, has launched some very successful social media campaigns and has some really unique perspectives in regards to social media and how it works with youth in social media today. As we both know, social media isn't going away. It's constantly evolving and changing. Obviously, there were the days of MySpace.
to TikTok.
Yes, to TikTok. And so many things in between.
You're not going to dance, though, right? Like, you and I are not going to do a TikTok for the audience. That's not going to happen, right?
Not on the podcast. However, Garden Valley does now have a TikTok. So we are getting that up and running. Probably by the time that this is airing, that will be fully fleshed out and on there. And yes, we will have Brandon doing some dancing.
No way.
He says no. Sean says no. I say they're gonna. And Sean handed me the marketing department.
Yeah.
But obviously you've had a lot of experience over the years. You kind of grew up at a point where social media is the norm for you. Like that's been in your life forever. For me, I very clearly remember a time where, computers weren't in households.
We had the floppy disk when I was like a little kid.
Yeah, so I remember the first computer that I saw. It was one of the super old style Apple ones that my mom was using for work. And for some reason had brought it home for something. But I was like in late elementary school or early junior high.
Wow.
So I can very clearly remember when we didn't have a computer. And even when my mom brought it home, like that was pretty early on. Like that was not a normal thing to do. So talk to me about how that has influenced you as an individual compared to people that are realistically like the peoples that are in their 30s and 40s that don't remember social media. Because you work, like, you're the youngest one on staff, let's be honest. You are the youngest one on staff. Everybody else is 30 and over. The bulk of us being, I think, in our 30s and 40s. So what is it like having a dramatically different perspective because you have lived in the social media age and that's all you've really known?
It's weird. It's weird seeing 30, 40-year-olds on their phones on Facebook or Instagram or whatever to engage and look at what's going on in the world. It's weird because over time, like, okay, the thing is, I love social media. We'll talk about that. But I'm very much like when I'm in a room with you, I'm not sitting on my phone on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Like, so I feel like I've kind of changed in that way. A lot of my generation, they're sitting across the table and they're sitting on their phones or etc. So for me, I think social media is a beautiful thing because you get to connect with people all over the world. And when it's done right and done in the right context, I think that social media has the ability to actually change lives for the better. And I'm not just talking like watching Stephen Furtick from Elevation do a sermon, you know?
Yeah.
I'm talking like real content, like Sword and Pencil, Scott the Painter, 1924 US, like some of those different brands. 1924 US is actually from Canyonville, which is crazy.
Yes.
It's amazing. Christian's awesome. Never had the chance to meet him. That's a goal. But I think that it's been very interesting seeing the times change, and especially with kids nowadays with like the thing like TikTok. Like 20s, 30s, 40s year olds are literally sitting on their phones watching TikTok. I remember when Gary Vaynerchuk was like, TikTok's going to be the new thing, like it's going to blow up, everyone's going to use it, and everyone thought he was crazy. In the back of my head, I knew that that would be the future of social media. And so kind of going from, I briefly remember MySpace. I remember things like Tumblr and when Twitter was a thing before it was ever kind of like reintroduced and all that, especially with Elon Musk and all that stuff now. But anyways, all that to say, it's been a very interesting transition because I've known it pretty much my whole life. So.
Yeah. So you clearly have grown up in church, as we already know, if you've listened to previous episodes. And as a result, there is this very consistent dialogue over the years with churches that social media needs to be done away with. And even some of our executive staff has really talked in that direction, that social media needs to not be a thing. A lot of our executive staff they don't use it. They don't have a social media presence. They've kind of deleted their footprint in that regard.
Sure.
And I remember, because I worked as youth staff when you were youth, us having these regular dialogues with parents in regards to, hey, like, you need to limit social media with your kids. You need to try to eliminate it. This is really bad. Obviously, your perspective is different. So talk about how you interact now with parents as a youth leader with this social media positive mindset.
Yeah. Well, because I've kind of built out my quote unquote own community online, the Ruach page is literally people from all over, whether they're believers, not believers, people searching for God, not searching for God. It's kind of all over the place. So to have the youth kids come into that community where there's all this stuff happening, I know for some parents it may seem a little like kind of weird, maybe a little scary, but I'm so passionate about creating positive content that speaks hope, that speaks life to those teenagers, especially during COVID. I remember when we had all that, not that we're going to spend the whole podcast talking about it, but I do remember kids reaching out and being like, whatever, you posted this last week and I was going through this and that really helped me through something. And I remember for me, that was where, and I've kind of been doing social media for a long time, specifically over the last 3 years, like creating this kind of like positive mindset and stuff, that social media can be a good thing. And I really believe that we can change the world through social media. Like, I really believe that. So, I'm very passionate about it.
Well, and it clearly shows. Like you said a little bit ago, there was this very clear trajectory from MySpace to where we're at present day as we're reporting this TikTok. And I remember from a marketing perspective, really seeing the engagement on videos start to shoot up. Probably about 5 years or so, 5 years ago, somewhere in there. And I do remember hearing rumblings about TikTok and how it really was video content. Like, there's not an option for anything else. It's literally, you have to have a video attached to it. You can't do a picture like you can with Instagram. And I remember being like, God, that's so much work.
It is work.
And I know that churches and youth groups especially don't typically have paid youth leaders. So there's normally youth leaders are going through and they have a regular full-time job on the side. Well, on the side, I guess that's the best way to say it.
Youth ministry is the full-time job.
Yes, youth ministry ends up being that full-time passion job, but then you have a regular 40-hour-a-week side job. That's your side hustle.
Yeah, that's funny.
But you see youth pastors where they don't have youth leaders that are paid that can spend time creating video content that isn't just, let's do this in the middle of the night when I have 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But the same with churches. A lot of churches don't have marketing departments. They don't have someone focused on social media that is in the office where, okay, I can actually engage and get these people recording videos and talking with the staff and talking with the youth leaders and talking with these people. So has that influenced your perspective on social media? The fact that you really, just by nature of you're on site, you're in the building full time. This is like you have your Ruach brand, you have the clothing line, you have the music, but the youth leading that's your thing. Like that's your drive.
core.
That's your full-time job. And literally like that's your day job. Like that's what you do. The other stuff is on the side. So how has that influenced that positive mindset that you have towards social media and changing everything?
I said in another video, I think it was, I can't remember. We were talking about it though on one of the videos. And it's this idea that the template I've built out for Ruach is a template I can apply to Remix. It's a template I can apply to like screen printing. Like it's all kind of under this vein or this compass of here's how to do it. Here's how to engage people. Here's how. And so like for me, social media is not that I see it as a game by any means, but you do have to play the game. You have to follow the rules. You have to kind of, stay relevant and do some of those things. So like TikTok, hardly even use that. I'm learning how to from a different like business standpoint or from a creative standpoint. Like when we were doing the album, we did TikTok videos and some of that kind of stuff. But for me, going back to your question, I think it's really influenced me as a person to not feel bad when I see so much negativity on social media, because I feel like God's actually given me a key to release to other people for social media, to use it in a positive way. And, we could always talk about how to have parameters, how to be safe, all that kind of stuff, because all of that is super important when it comes to that. But I think that we're just tapping into what social media can do for reaching the world. So that's how I look at Remix. I see Remix actually as something so much bigger than just here at Garden Valley on site, but actually reaching people out abroad, so it's kind of all over the place.
And luckily, because you're here, you do have the time to really delve into that. You're not running on this constant crisis mode. You're able to think more proactively, which then just by nature means that your thoughts are more positive because you don't always feel like you're constantly behind, which I'm sure is a perk.
That helps.
Yes. And then our staff, just for those of you that may not know, our staff just by nature is very positive. We try to make sure let's keep it very realistic. We try not to overshoot a crazy insane amount. But we are very positive. We try to make sure that we're uplifting, and I'm sure that carries over and influences the ability to maintain that perspective.
And stay here.
Yes, and stay grounded in reality and stay in Garden Valley. And
it's really true.
Yeah, so obviously COVID happened. That was a thing that dramatically shifted youth ministry.
Yes, it did.
I was working a regular full-time job outside of everything I did for the church at the time when it hit. And I was working graveyards. That was 10 out of 10, don't recommend. Yeah, but I do remember seeing this it felt intentional, even though I knew the reality was it was not intentional because COVID hit and no one was really anticipating it to hit as hard as it hit. But I remember having conversations with Sean Konopowski at the time because he was our marketing director. He's our executive pastor now. And hearing all of these different things that were happening in the building because I couldn't be in the building. And one of them being, you switched Remix to all online for a season.
We were an online platform.
Which is just, I'm a part of a number of Facebook groups with different communicators and social media managers and different things within churches. I didn't hear of any of them doing that. They did their main services. They were operating on crisis mode. And for some reason, we decided not to do that. We decided to go like way over and above. I don't think Sean slept.
No, he did not.
I mean,
Most of us were here for like late hours.
he was still here when I was
yeah,
coming on
right.
shift at 10 p.m.
Yep.
Which is how I was able to figure out kind of what we were doing and what I needed to do on the social media side. But what was that like? Because obviously it changed your interactions, not just with the teens, but I'm sure you saw a perspective shift from the parent side of things on what online communities can do, what online forums can do, what social media can end up doing, and probably in a more positive manner than we've seen before.
Yeah. I remember when Twitch first came out as a gamer. I love video games, always have my whole life. Actually, before this podcast, we were freaking out about the new Call of Duty, my buddy Sam and I. So,
That was entertaining.
Yeah,
They
for
were
sure.
sitting here freaking out. And
like
our
junior
video,
hires, man.
yes, like junior hires. And then very clearly, like, I don't think I've ever seen the distinction more in our age gap. And it's not huge, but it's just enough that our video director and I were across the room talking about the political climate and just in general everything that's happening.
Real stuff.
There was recently a school shooting and a war going on, and we were going back and forth about all that and mental health. And then there's Sam and Brandon geeking out hardcore about a video game that's getting released. It was
All that to say,
it highlighted social media,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
because it was on Instagram when it came out. And listen, they posted it. It's like there. Okay, I got the notification on. So that's awesome. I always encourage people like on whether it's Remix, Ruach, etc. Like
Turn your
turn those
notification on.
notifications on. You'll never miss anything. Back to your thing of what you were talking
Yes.
about. So when Twitch first came out, there was something so special about one of your favorite YouTubers or people that games. You can actually sit in the room and kind of online and watch them do that.
And interact with them,
Interact
right?
with them,
it
type, whatever you want.
I've never been on Twitch, I'll be honest. Like,
Yes,
I've
you
never been
can
on Twitch, but
little things,
if I
yeah.
remember right, it has like a chat function. So you literally
Or
can
engaging.
be able to build a community that way in a way that you never had been before.
Absolutely. And so I think of youth ministry that way online. So when we would do our live streams, I was at my house. I wasn't even at the church. I was doing a worship night at my house. I just had an acoustic, like just singing. I was missing some notes, and then I'd do a little sermon, and then it was time for dinner. So we did youth. It just looked different.
Okay.
And what I learned through that was that kids are so looking to be seen and to be known, and that in the middle of what they're going through, that there isn't a lot of avenues to bring positive content or positive things that help them to keep going throughout the week. And it was so intentional to the point, because we had a lot of free time here. I was doing
Can't imagine why.
Instagram stories of how's your mental health this week? What are 3 things that you're working on? Here is a couple of tools or different videos or content from other preachers or people on that subject. And so it was very, very like thought out and very intentional. And so for me, looking at that, and from owning a clothing line business, I want people to see the behind the scenes. I want them to be in every moment that we're doing. It's the same with youth ministry. So the shift was more like, how do I take everything I built on a business online platform to connect with people? And it's changed ever since then. Like Ruach's going to be 3 tomorrow, like 3 years old. And so it's really
And I
exciting.
think by the time it airs, it'll be about 3.5.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so 3.5 years. I forget that we're
I
always
know.
doing this
So
on
we're
time.
recording. It's actually June 2022.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly when this episode comes out. But when he references things or when things are referenced on what's going on in culture today, we're in June. That's why it sounds slightly cryptic, because it's not in the context of the time span.
For sure. And we're just, living in the moment.
Yes.
All that to say, though, for me, beginning Ruach 3 years ago to now, or 3.5, whenever that is, it has very much changed in the way that we do communication, in the way that we connect with our audiences. And so taking that into how do we do that in youth ministry? Oh my gosh, because I did that during COVID and for over 1.5 years with a business, I had the tools to be able to do that from an online platform for the youth ministry. So like I said, it's a template. I was able to kind of pull from other things. And I really think that's what the Holy Spirit kind of led me to do with that business, was to get those tools so that I'd be able to, when COVID hit, have everything kind of already in play and set up. So that's why we used it as an online platform. And I'm very excited about the future of Remix and how we're going to begin to communicate to multiple audiences all over the world, not just our little Roseburg, Oregon community. So
Perfect. Well, obviously, in the last 2 years, basically kind of since COVID hit, there's been a number of studies that have come out about the negative effects to social media. You obviously are aware of those.
I am.
You don't diminish those by any means. How do you take that perspective when you're talking? Because I imagine that, because I led youth, I imagine that you're having conversations with parents about youth and social media and the reality that to a certain degree, you're kind of almost encouraging the youth to use social media. So how do you talk with the parents about, like, do you encourage them to put boundaries around it? Or is it just kind of, hey, they do it as much as they want? Like, what are those conversations like for you?
Man, it's interesting. When we came out with music and dropped an album, we had more parents looking to the page for different info and trying to find out what's going on, that kind of stuff. And I think that kind of helped encourage some of that. If I were to look at my stories and look at like the people interacting, because I just do that, I'm that person. I'm like, who's looking at stuff? Who wants to know more? And how can I further interact with that? Then, if they don't go to the youth group, that's the first thing I do. If it's a parent like online and I know them from the church and their kids don't go to the youth group, I'm automatically, hey there, I'm Brandon Stone, and I'm communicating with them. So a lot of my communication is done through social media. It almost like kind of forces them to get pushed there, and then there's content, and then there's good stuff, and then it kind of like helps to kind of train the brain to realize that social media doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be if it's done in the wrong context and there's not parameters and you're not being safe and your kids aren't being smart. Like, I wouldn't hand a phone to a young kid like that. I think that if parents want to give their young kids social media, that's up to the parent. There's a quote that I kind of live by with in regards to whether it's owning a business and having a clothing line or doing youth ministry or music or whatever. If whatever I'm creating is good, if the grass is green, right? I'm not worried about what sheep are coming in because I'm focused on the grass. If the grass is good, then I can communicate with the sheep. Yeah. Instead of trying to, hey, come to my youth group, come to my thing that I've got going on, and here's why, here's the lights and here's the pizza and da. I mean, we have party nights, we have fun. If you were to come to Remix on a Wednesday night, there's like theology, there's things that we talk about things that kids are going through, like real tough subjects. We just got done with this whole thing on fivefold ministry, and before that it was about understanding covering and why covering is so important with both your family and leaders, etc., being mentored, being discipled. And
You're talking undercover of like the authority.
Yes, the authority, which we're going to do a whole episode on. All of that came back to at the beginning of the year when COVID was kind of starting to slowly dissipate. We came up with a plan. In a year, this is what we want to cover. And now we're getting to the good stuff. It's like the empowerment, the gifts of the Spirit, walking that out. And so all that to say, all of that can be communicated through social media. Not
Perfect.
just on a Wednesday night.
Well, I obviously, for those of you that don't know me, I am the parent of a 12-year-old. Brandon had the unique perspective of quite literally babysitting him during youth group when he was 1, 2, 3, 4. So me as a parent, like I manage social media for a living. Like this is literally what I do. My son's not on social media. He can't even access like Safari or Google Chrome or anything like that to even try to get to social media.
Sure.
And part of that is I know my child. My 12-year-old is just naive enough to not catch on to some of those nuances of social media. Do you have some of those conversations with parents? Because I know you have a different relationship with me than you probably do most of the other parents of kids in the youth group.
We have history.
Yes, we have history. We have a very transparent friendship, and what I share with you is different than what I share with a lot of other people.
Sure.
But you also know that you probably already knew that Isaiah's not on social media. But what is it that you talk with parents about when they do come to you on, hey, like, how do I handle social media with my kid? Because I think a lot of parents are clueless. Like, they know social media isn't great, but they don't know, like, what is too much and what isn't enough.
Sure.
So how do you have those conversations with them now as a youth leader? What are you seeing that culture like? What are you seeing parents want to cultivate in their family?
Man, those are great questions.
Is it legitimately that they're not even really asking that at this
They
point?
haven't asked. And I
Okay.
think that's kind of the thing for me. Lots of teenagers are on social media.
Yeah, there's not.
Yeah.
I worked at a youth homeless shelter. There was not a youth that walked in our doors that was not
Sure.
like fully 100% engrossed in social media.
Yeah.
Like, we tried to institute a policy where their phones were kind of out of sight, out of mind between certain hours.
Sure.
Generally, I think it was like 10 to 6 a.m., something like that. So basically, the goal of sleeping hours. It very quickly was shown this isn't working. They're like going into hardcore withdrawal.
Yeah.
So is a lot of it just that the parents legitimately, like, they aren't having, either they're instituting it themselves or they're not asking, so they're not doing much?
It's interesting because I never want to be devil's advocate. You know what I mean? Like, I never want to be you should, but I think there comes a point where you should ask your kids about social media and about, like, maybe how you feel about it. And if those parents are saying, hey, I don't think that's a good idea, let's go sit down with your youth director and let's talk about that, or let's sit down together and have a conversation, not just, this is my opinion and I'm the parent and here's why. There's a level of coming under that covering, right? That whole thing of, that's my parent. They pay the phone bill. That, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's that. But there also has to be a level of trust between the kid and the parent, in the sense that I see having a phone and social media and etc. It's a responsibility. When I wake up and I go to create content, my brain is thinking, this is a responsibility that I've been given, a gift that I've been given to hold that as a responsibility for these teenagers. Maybe that's a little different than most people when they approach social media. But my goal is to create a safety net, a place of safety where kids can ask questions, where I do Q&As every Monday. Ask me anything. There've been questions about things, identity and, like, how do little things teenagers say, like, I have a crush on this guy. How do I talk to him about it? What do I say? Go talk to your parent about it.
Yeah, so Isaiah has a cell phone, obviously, because I think I just said that. But there's also, I'm big on, obviously, like my parents are here in the church. Like my mom's one of the associate pastors. But I'm really big on shifting that perspective of control to parameters. Like, and if
Yeah.
they want to cross those parameters, they're going to cross those parameters. Like I was
Sure.
all about crossing parameters. Despite how much control my parents tried to
Sure.
have on me, I very clearly a number of times broke out of that control because I had a kid at 19. But the reality of it is, like, I look at Isaiah, like he has a cell phone, in that perspective of, okay, like I'm trusting you with this. However, with trust comes parameters. If I ask to have the cell phone to look at it, you better be willing to hand it over to me, because if you're not, I know that's a major red flag, which means that I have to get on the phone with your dad and your stepmom, and the four of us, including my husband,
Sure.
start to have a conversation about, okay, like we're seeing a red flag. How do we, all four of us, want to handle this?
Right.
And generally, we haven't really had it happen, but the general consensus that we were like, if this happens, this is probably what we'll do, is he'll lose the phone for a season. And we aren't sure exactly what that season will look like. But I feel like a lot of parents they want to keep in touch with their kids.
Sure.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's why Isaiah has one. Because he's going back and forth between two households. Otherwise, he
I
would.
was 13 babysitting. So that was
Yeah.
the only reason I had a phone.
Yeah, like Isaiah probably wouldn't have got one until he was much older, except for the fact that he goes between two
Sure.
houses. But I think a lot of parents do. It's literally they want to communicate with their kid. And that's as far as a lot of the thought process goes.
Sure.
They don't think about the context of, I'm handing my child a smartphone. That's terrifying, let me tell you. Or the dangers of what can be accessed from the smartphone. I know Carl Wells will talk extremely passionately about why you don't hand anybody a smartphone. Carl didn't have a smartphone until just a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And it's all about essentially risk management,
Yeah.
I feel.
And having those parameters, it
And
creates a
having
safety
open
net.
communication. Like, have communication with your kiddo. Like-
I'll tell a story just quickly. My dad and I were sitting in the truck, and he was driving down the road or whatever, and and he goes, "Do you ever get texts like this?" I said, "That's a spam." He's like, "Yeah." And then it was a not so good text that came through. Someone
Yes.
got his number or whatever. Yeah, we've had that. But
Yes,
it
I
was
had one last week.
open communication. That to me creates a safety net where I can go, yeah, like I have that too sometimes, and then we started dialoguing, But the thing is, and we were just talking about this in your office a little bit, but the thing is, the Bible does not say if you face various trials, It says when, capital WHEN, when you face various trials, right? It's the testing of your faith, knowing that creates character to produce, right? All that. When you face various trials. So I am not hung up on a kid coming to me in youth group and saying, hey, this happened to me this week and I saw this and I didn't meet, something happened. Okay, sure.
Okay, cool. How do we handle it?
How do
now?
we handle it?
Yeah.
Then there's also, Brandon, I really need to talk to you about something. Okay, what's up? I engaged in this. I chose to go to Okay, let's talk about it. Let's work with this. Have you told your parents? Have you, right? Like, so it's not just, oh, I'm coming to youth leader and I'm hearing everything, right? It's, I need you to go to your parents or to whoever you feel safe with, whatever, and actually talk through that, because I want you to walk in wholeness, not hide it in the dark. You know what I mean? Or just have one person know. And so for me, I see social media that way. I get messages, I get DMs every week about stuff and things going on with people because I check in with them. Our teens, I check in with them. Hey, how you doing? Okay, yeah. Tell me about because I heard And I think that social media from a leadership perspective can be a very positive thing because you're actually seeing what's going on in their world, not just what happens on Sunday morning
Or what they're
Wednesday night.
saying.
Or saying,
Yeah.
you get the real perspective. And what I've always told the kids is I know I'm not a perfect leader, and I never want you to think that I am, because every time I'm going to miss the mark. What I want you to see is that I want to be real and genuine and authentic with you, so that you can also be genuine and authentic with me. And there's that connection. And I honestly think that's partly been the success of youth ministry, is just having
Oh, I guarantee it. Like,
so.
Wendy and I saw probably the most success when we were being authentic and vulnerable and real with you guys.
It's true.
My hands down, like, out of all the resources that I got as a youth pastor, out of all of the things that I just learned by trial through fire as a youth pastor, my favorite thing was being a youth pastor when social media was really starting to bud. Because you guys, I don't think fully realized that because we were your friend on social media, that meant that we could
Saw
see what you were
everything.
posting.
Oh yeah.
And there were multiple times where we would text and be like, I don't think they know that we can see this.
I remember multiple conversations like, did you know that so and so, because I saw it on Facebook. Saw that on Facebook? Oh no.
Yes. I remember as a manager, like, it wasn't even all that long after I left youth pastorship, but I hired someone that I knew, and they posted something on Facebook. And I literally, the next day went into work and I was like, like, I don't know if you fully realize this, so I'm erring on the side of assuming that you don't. Everybody that's friends with you can see what you just did. They were like,
What are you
what?
talking about?
I was like, yeah, so that like super inappropriate dress that like showed way too much. They were like, oh my God, I need to remove it. I'm like, that's probably a good call. Let's maybe not post that again. Like, maybe just not wear that dress again, but let's not post that again. But it was my favorite thing because there was this unintentional transparency that ended up being cultivated by that, but yours is very intentional. Like, we were intentional as youth leaders. This is a whole different level because
It's just a different time.
teens know what social media is and how it's used, and that when you're friends with someone or you follow someone, they can see the vast majority of your stuff unless you really are getting fancy with the filters. But
Yeah.
you're being very intentionally transparent and being intentional in checking in with them and looking at their social
Trying to.
media and kind of seeing what's going on within their world outside of Sundays and Wednesdays, which is, I think, a lot more than some youth leaders do. I think we have some amazing youth leaders. I think we have some amazing youth leaders in Douglas County, but I think a vast amount of youth leaders, as a general rule of thumb, probably don't go quite that in depth. So it's great to see that you are.
Yeah, and I'm working on being, like I said, like my phone's off when I'm in the room kind of thing, just because I'm trying to work on that genuine connection. So it's like I have a time block. This is for social media, this is for content creation, and it's really helped me to be a lot more healthier, to be present in a room with somebody, hear the conversation that's going on, whatever.
You're proactive
Yeah,
now.
and then there's times to watch funny videos or whatever.
Right?
Watch guitar videos. I mean, that happens, but yeah. So for me, social media is a beautiful tool when it's done right, and I would say to the parents, definitely talk to your kids about it. Don't be afraid to talk to them about social media, and if you're seeing things going on with their character, their pattern of life, whatever, begin to ask those questions and begin to have a conversation. Also, don't go into it feeling like you have the right answer.
It's
No, it's
also
hard to
okay to not have an answer.
Yeah,
I think
that's exactly what I
I
was
think
going
parents struggle
Absolutely.
with feeling like they need to have the answers to all the questions or walk in with a solution.
Yeah.
Be transparent with your kid if you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah. And the other thing is find somebody who knows what they're doing and ask those questions. I can't tell you how many times I've went up to Matt Brady, right? And said, hey, I have this not this teenager. I have this situation come up, and I need some parameters. How do I do that?
Yep.
You know?
I regularly call Matt, mainly with tech questions, but with other things too.
Sure.
Where I'm like,
He
hey,
knows all kinds.
I just did this.
Mhm.
And this was the outcome. How do I fix this? Because I don't know how to rewind this.
It's awesome.
Constantly. And
Yeah.
he's very good about setting forth and doing, to a certain degree, he's amazing at chaos management. Like that's what he excels at, is chaos management and stepping in and very clearly seeing
Yeah.
that maze on how to get out of that maze,
Yeah.
whether it's a tech question or something else. Like he has a unique perspective that way.
It's amazing.
So Matt Brady, great resource if you guys are having any weird issues. Just call him.
Yeah. For sure. I love what you said about it's okay to not have an answer. That's it. You can't always have the answer. And but I feel like I'm just in kind of a unique position to, in a world of social media and kids being on their phone, to be able to actually connect with them in a very genuine and interesting way. My prayer has been that I continue to foster those connections outside of high school and those kinds of things. Some of them are coming on to help out this summer, so I'm stoked about that. But just to keep that going so that those kids are connected to people. I also understand the thing of, you're only going to connect to the people you're in front of. So I think that should be number one, like being with family, spending time with friends, having fun, but also having that social media connection. I think there's a balance in both. So
I think you were talking about time blocking. I learned it when I was at a real estate office.
I learned it from Wendy, so.
Yes, that would be why, is because I was at the same real estate office as her.
Exactly. It's funny.
But I started being very intentional in time blocking things out, including going through and time blocking things out, like spending time just with my husband
Good.
or with my 12-year-old or whatever. And sometimes we'll use the full amount of time. Sometimes we don't. Like sometimes it's just been a weird week and both of us just want to sit there and do nothing. But it's changed how Isaiah and I especially communicate with each other in that context, because he knows, hey, like he's in a unique, not necessarily unique nowadays, but he's in a unique position in our families where he has 4 different parents that he can go to. So we have 4 different sets of opinions, 4 different perspectives. So chances are he can probably find someone that he can communicate whatever it is to. But it's been nice to see that evolution of me kind of setting that phone down and really sitting down and talking with him and engaging on, hey, like whatever it is that was going on in that day or that week or however it laid out that particular week. It's been a shift, and I'd love to see more parents making that trajectory to where they're disconnecting from their phones and showing their kids that it's okay to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because now we're in the age where the kids that had straddled that line between no technology and learning technology are the ones that are having children.
Yeah.
And I think that we're probably the worst at keeping a separation of technology and non-technology.
Yeah.
But showing the kids that, hey, like we don't have to be fully engaged with technology and social media 100% of the time. It's okay to set the phone down or power the phone off and have that family life balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I hope this episode helps you guys. I just have one thing I want to say, concluding, and if Emily has any thoughts, but I really feel in my heart, like for those of you who maybe have been looked down on because you use social media as a positive platform, I hope that this podcast inspires you to create and to do that in a way that connects to people, because there are people out there that don't feel connected, and social media can be one way that you can connect to them in a positive way. At the same time, I hope that you'll put the phone down and spend time with family and spend time with friends and enjoy life, because there is so much more to life than just social media. So having that healthy balance is super important.
Yeah, and I think really the only thing that I have left to say is social media is not going away. And I would like to encourage the church to start intentionally praying in God's presence to what social media is and will be in the future.
Yeah.
The reach is insane and huge and can be significantly more impactful than what we realize.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage you guys to start shifting that perspective in a positive manner, like Brandon was talking about, and intentionally praying and asking the Holy Spirit to start invading the crevices of the social media platforms and the internet.
That's so good. Yeah, and you know, I don't know if this will ever get out to Instagram or Facebook or what on there, the people who own it, but these platforms can be used for good. And so you don't have to silence people because the content is, you know, Christian or too
controversial for you.
controversial. I mean, my live got canceled this morning because I talked about my testimony and how God breathed me back to life and why I wrote one of the songs I wrote. But I would say if they ever see this video, allow the light to come into social media and watch what it'll do. Because social media can be used for good. So see you guys in another episode. Love you. We'll see you later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're interested in checking out more of our podcasts as they come available, please download our app in your device's app store or check us out on your podcast platform at Garden Valley Church. We look forward to seeing you next time.
The cat could eat the rats. We could stop with the traps.
I love it.
Does that
And-
rhyme?
I don't care if it rhymes. I'm being serious. We should get a church cat. Do you think PC would ever notice?
The dogs would.
When
Oh,
There are
shit.
dogs here all
when
the
carpets
time.
are scratched up from it staying inside all weekend.
No, because like people are in and out all weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
At church, can we decline?
We'll put
Yeah.
them in the remix
No,
room.
because we wanted to get the mice, and Sean won't let
Can
us
we get-
keep a cat when we
Can
remodel.
we get a hairless cat?
No, we don't want a rodent.
Oh,
We
right.
want the cat to get rid of rodents. Oh my gosh.